Welcome to the channel. This is Jay Mancini, where we keep the wheels rolling and the cash flowing. Guys, so this video today, I'm going to tell you a story because I think this video is really important. Now, if I was to drop a course, these things I'm going to talk about today would definitely be on that course. Guys, let me tell you the story and why I'm doing this video today. I was actually talking to a really good friend of mine. I've been knowing him for a very long time. As a matter of fact, he's been in the dump truck business a lot longer than I have, okay? So to be honest with you, I actually learned quite a few things. So me and him were having a conversation just the other day, and he's actually who inspired me to do this, because after being in business for so long and owning 10 trucks, yes, he owns 10 dump trucks out on the West Coast, very expensive dump trucks, super dumps. He was telling me that, he's making good money. He's actually making close to 7 figures, or a little over 7 figures, but he's got one issue, and his issue is the following. He's still getting work from brokers. And the one thing that I personally cannot understand is, why is he still dealing with brokers when he's been in the business as long as he's been, for a very long time, and he owns 10 dump trucks, and these are fairly new dump trucks, very expensive super dumps. And I'm thinking to myself, man, as long as you've been in the business, as long as you've had the experience that you have and everything that you know, but you're still getting work from brokers. So to me, this is a very big problem, because that also contributes to many other problems. At this stage, he should already have his own companies. He should already be dealing directly with contractors and having his own business. So guys, today I'm going to talk about the 10 things that I learned that catapulted my business to 7 figures, and how you can do the same without brokers. All right, guys, so let's dive in. Number 1, guys, knowing how to deal with owner operators and drivers, meaning you need to learn how to deal with these people, with the owner operators and the drivers. And I know I've mentioned relationships. Well, this is a relationship, right? And I have videos just on this alone. So owner operators and drivers, why? Because first and foremost, even if you start off with one truck, like most people, right? You're gonna have to deal with the driver, or if you're driving it, and eventually, as you start to get your own jobs, you're gonna have to deal with owner operators, right? So this is an essential thing, because the owner operators that you will eventually hire to get to a 7-figure business, okay, they're the ones that are going to help you do all these other jobs. So if you're running multiple jobs, 3, 4, 5 jobs, and you're having 2, 3, or 4, or even 10 trucks at different jobs, you're going to have to be able to manage these guys. You're going to have to learn some leadership skills. You're going to have to know how to talk to these owner operators and have a good relationship. Why? Obviously, you need them to come and work with you or for you, right? The same thing goes with drivers. If you own multiple trucks, you need to know how to manage, you need to know how to lead those drivers. And I know that a lot of guys, if you're already in the business, you know that drivers can be a big issue, right? You have sometimes guys that are not responsible, they don't show up to work, they call in. So guess what? This is a part of the territory of you growing and scaling a business and eventually becoming a 7, not to mention an 8-figure business. These are going to be the most crucial things. Learning how to deal with drivers, learning how to deal with owner operators, because once again, if you own trucks, you got to manage those drivers, right? You got to know how to get along with them. You got to know how to get these guys out there and not only do the job they're supposed to, but also have a mutual relationship and have a mutual respect to where both of you work in harmony. And the same thing goes with owner operators when you have to go out and hire owner operators to perform the jobs that your trucks are not on. So with owner operators, guys, one of the things I always tell people is, not only do you have to know how to manage them, not only you have to know how to obviously get along with these people and have a mutual respect and work in harmony, but a lot of other things get involved, right? Like knowing what you're going to pay the guys. What are you going to pay owner operators? Because obviously this is a major thing, right? You may have all kind of respect for them and they may feel the mutual respect for you, but you have to know what you're going to pay the owner operators. You have to have competitive rates for them to come and work for you, right? That's one thing. The second thing is you got to also understand their nature and what kind of jobs they like to do. And I'm going to just tell you a little bit more about it. With my business, I have guys that are owner operators that they only want to deal with gravel. Some only want to deal with sand and dirt, and some only want to deal with asphalt. Yes, I have asphalt guys who will not come and work on a dirt or a sand job. And I have this, and vice versa, guys that are in dirt and sand and they don't want to deal with the asphalt, right? So they're kind of a niche thing, right? And I've had videos on that as well. So these are multiple components that you have to learn, again, to eventually get to a 7-figure business, okay? Now, with drivers, it's somewhat similar, okay? You have to make sure that your drivers, before they go out and they get on your truck and they go out onto a job site, they know all the protocols, that they have experience, okay, that they do their pre-trips, that they check the truck, and most importantly, the safety precautions that they have to take, that they can communicate effectively with whoever they have to communicate on job sites, and of course, most importantly, with you if you own a truck or own multiple trucks. All right, guys, so now moving on to number 2. Maintenance to your trucks and dealing with mechanics. Well, they come hand in hand, right? I talked about this also in other videos. As you know, if you own a truck or multiple trucks, especially if you own multiple trucks, you're gonna have a lot of maintenance issues, okay? This is the nature of the business. They're trucks, they're a tool that you use every single day, or that the drivers get on the truck, and if they're not watching what they're doing, and they may run over something, they may, tear up a tire, or they may hit something and they may not tell you about it. I've seen drivers run on low fuel and then the truck stalls out in the middle of the road. A lot of things that can happen, okay? So maintenance to the trucks is extremely important, and I do have a video on that as well. And along with the maintenance is your mechanic. So keeping up with good maintenance, preventive maintenance, but also having a good mechanic, or even better, 2 or 3 mechanics. One thing that I run into, guys, is that I might have one head mechanic, but that guy may be real busy, okay? And this happens all the time, because usually if you find a good mechanic, he's probably gonna be busy. So you gotta have a second mechanic and maybe even a third mechanic. Now for me, guys, I actually have a couple different guys that do different things, right? I have one guy that only does maintenance, and I have one guy that only does major work, and then I have another guy who's just basically the guy that I take to whenever I have any questions or concerns, that does basically just a diagnostic, okay? So these are different things that you also need to implement and that you need to be thinking about as you get into the dump truck business, or if you're already in the dump truck business and you're thinking about having multiple trucks, so that eventually you can get to a 7-figure business, especially if you're not gonna have brokers. Now, if you're a guy that is the broker, right, and you may only have a few trucks, or maybe even one truck, and you are a broker, then you might not deal with this as much. But even then, even if you have one truck, this is still gonna be just as important, right? You still gotta give it maintenance, and you still gotta have a good mechanic or good multiple mechanic. One thing, guys, also that you gotta keep in mind, if you get to the point where you're now having 5, 6, 7, maybe even 9 or 10 trucks, not to mention more than 10 trucks, you may also consider hiring a fleet manager, right? A fleet manager is basically gonna be the person that's gonna take care of all of this, right? And what do I mean by a fleet manager? Well, he's gonna be responsible of literally dealing with all the maintenance and scheduling anything that has to do with maintenance to the trucks, and also dealing with the mechanics. Now, at the end of the day, I still believe that you should oversee this, but once you start to have multiple trucks, you gotta start to do the math and figure, well, at what point do I need to hire a fleet manager? So keep that in mind as well as you start to think of growing and scaling your dump truck business. Number 3, guys, sales. Now, I wanna go back to the story that I told you at the very beginning, because one of the things that I definitely believe that my friend has not implemented, and the reason why he's still dealing with brokers, is this right here. Okay, now he's pretty decent here, he's pretty good here, but this is one thing that I know for a fact he has not implemented. And I know that it's kind of a tough conversation. When I talked to him about it, he did not take it lightly, but I'm being very straightforward with you guys. Sales. The main reason why he's still dealing with brokers, because he doesn't know sales. Now you're probably thinking, Jay, sales in the dump truck business? Absolutely, yes. And I'm being very straightforward with you, because here's the thing, whenever you have a business, 2 things you're gonna do. You're gonna sell and you're gonna market. Okay, you need marketing and you need sales. You need both of them. So what I mean by that is, when you go out and you're trying to get new customers, what are you doing? You're selling your service, because what are you doing at the end of the day? You're providing a dump truck service. And if you're providing dump truck services, that means that you're selling. Guys, you have to understand that even when you're talking to somebody and you only own one truck and you're trying to get business dealing directly with a contractor, you're actually selling yourself at the very beginning, even if you only have one dump truck, okay? Because if that person doesn't like you, guess what? They're not gonna hire you, and you're gonna keep doing this, dealing with brokers, right? So to me personally, I firmly believe that my good friend, as much as I don't want to say it, but he's not doing this, he's not doing sales. So if he was just to go out there, he was to pick up the phone, maybe change his language, maybe change his attitude, and maybe add some techniques, and maybe be a little bit more persuasive and be more easygoing and be able to deal with people, then maybe he'd be able to actually start landing his own jobs, meaning he'd be able to start dealing directly with contractors. And once he starts dealing with contractors, he starts to get his own jobs. And guess what? As he starts to get his own jobs and he starts to get more contractors and dealing with more companies, he no longer needs this, brokers. One thing that I also want to add, guys, in sales, in the dump truck business, you got to also know how to secure contracts. You got to know how to also manage those relationships. What I mean by that is, even if you go out there and you get a new customer, it's not just getting the customer and going out there and doing the job, right? You also have to manage that relationship after you start working for that customer or that construction company, right? And you also have to know how to secure those contracts, because at the end of the day, even if you're dealing with somebody or you're dealing with multiple people, eventually you have to also learn, hey, how do I get paid? How do I get contracts? Okay, so whatever they hire you for, they're more than likely going to send you a contract, and you're going to also have to know how to secure those contracts as well. And that's also part of sales. Guys, and the reason why I say this is because my friend is actually old school. He's an older gentleman. So one problem with him is, and I understand this because I'm also a guy that likes to do everything on a handshake, but he still believes that everything's like back in the day where, hey, I shake your hand and it's a done deal. But unfortunately, guys, that's not the way that things are done nowadays, right? Nowadays, guys, you have to learn about contract. You have to know what contracts say, and you have to understand and know that if you're doing a contract, whatever stipulations are on there, you're willing to accept them, and vice versa. So without him knowing and learning how to understand contracts, there's no way that he's going to be able to get these big jobs and ultimately do what? Grow without broker. Number 4, guys, that leads me to customer service. So I have videos on this as well. Customer service, this just follows up with sales, right? So it's not as easy as just saying, hey, I got 10 trucks, I'm waiting for phone calls, and I know all these people because I've been in the business for a very long time, so I'm just going to sit here and wait and just dispatch my truck. No, you also have to have customer service. So even with him, when he's dealing with brokers, he still has to answer to the broker. So it's still in one way or another customer service. But when you're dealing directly with the contractors and you're dealing directly with these construction companies, especially if they're a bigger company, okay, and there's multiple people that you got to deal with, you have to know and understand what customer service is. What is customer service? Answering calls, sending emails, dealing with customer issues, addressing inquiries, and going the extra mile. With that being said, guys, I tell you that because one thing I know is that sometimes you got to have the patience, you got to have the personality, and you got to be willing to give customer service. Number 5, guys, dispatcher. You have to have a dispatcher. Eventually, as you start to grow and you get to 7 figures, can you dispatch trucks yourself? Of course you can. If in the situation that my friend is, he only has 10 trucks, yeah, of course he can dispatch all 10 of his drivers. But eventually, if you want to do this, not deal with brokers and have a multiple 7-figure business, maybe even an 8-figure business, which I believe he could have had an 8-figure business by now, being in the business as long as he's been, right? You have to do this. Hire a dispatcher, right? A dispatcher. Why? Because ultimately, as he's growing the business, he's going to need somebody to dispatch not only his drivers, but also these guys. Remember, owner-operators. Why? Because you start to get multiple jobs and you start to deal with multiple trucks in different jobs, and you're going to need this guy right here or this lady there, right? The dispatcher that's going to deal with them so that you can ultimately focus on growing the business. Remember that dispatcher also coordinates the truck scheduling and also the routing for all these trucks. So it's very important for you to have a dispatcher. All right, guys, that leads me to number 6, job site supervision. Now, what do I mean by job site supervision? I mean a supervisor, someone who's overseeing all the job sites that your trucks are on, meaning not only the trucks you own, but also the owner operators, right? You're probably hiring owner operators at this point if you're going to have a multiple 7-figure business, and especially if you're not dealing with brokers and you're dealing with companies directly, you're going to need someone who's going to supervise or oversee all the job sites. Now, at the beginning, guys, your dispatcher could also do this for you, right? Now, I've been in the situation when I got to that point where my dispatcher was actually also helping me supervise the multiple jobs that we were running with multiple trucks. But eventually there comes a point where you may have somebody just to do that one thing alone. That guy's actually checking in with all of the foremans or the superintendents to those multiple jobs, and he's just saying, hey, how you doing, Mr. Bob? Hey, I just want to check in with you, make sure everything's going good on the job, the trucks are doing what they're supposed to be doing. If anything comes up, please let me know, right? Especially if you got, let's just say 5, 6, 7, or 8 different jobs, not to mention with 5, 6, or 8, or 9, or 10 trucks in each job, a job site supervisor will eventually be a key component to the 7-figure business without brokers. All right, guys, that leads me to number 7, safety training. Now, one thing, your job site supervisor could also do the safety training, right? What do I mean by safety training? Well, what does that mean, Jay? That means the following. Again, we're talking here about a 7-figure business, right? Without brokers. This video is not for everybody, okay? So if you're no longer watching this video, I get it. Maybe it wasn't for you. But if you're that guy that's thinking, man, I would love to have one day a big business in the dump truck business and have 7 figures, then these are the things, right? Yes, you're going to have to learn safety training. Why? Because you're going to have a lot of trucks running in different jobs. And guess what? A lot of those guys sometimes tend to do this and stay on the phone, not pay attention, maybe get a little reckless. And they may not even be your drivers. They may be these guys, owner operators. But guess what? They're still your responsibility. Why? Because they're working under you. You're the one who represents them. So one thing that we do is safety training, okay? We have a meeting with these guys and we tell them, hey, these are the protocols that you have to take when you're on the job site. Now, for me, guys, I actually have an agreement that I make these guys sign. And in that agreement, I have all the safety protocols that they have to take when they're on the job. If something was to happen, right, and they didn't follow those protocols, guess what happens? I can go back to them and say, hey, Marco, remember when we talked about this? Remember when we had the safety meeting and you signed this here, this agreement with all the safety protocols? Well, you didn't follow one of these protocols and now you had an incident or an accident, so it falls back on him. So these are one of the things that you also must know. Safety training, how to train your owner operators and of course your drivers as well. Number 8, guys, administration. So what is administration? You have to have someone doing your administrative work. Now at the beginning, you may only have one individual, right? But eventually as you start to deal with everything we've talked about and you start to run multiple jobs with multiple trucks, you may need more than one person, okay? You need an administrative team. You may need somebody that's gonna do your accounts payable, and then you may need somebody who's gonna do accounts receivable. What is this, Jay? What are you talking about, Jay? This is too much for me to handle. Well, if it's too much for you to handle, then maybe this here isn't for you. But if this is what you want, 7 figures, this is what you need. You're going to need somebody who's going to deal with your accounts receivable, meaning the following. That person's going to be in charge of making sure you get paid everything that the dump truck business you own, right? That's what it is, right? So if we got 8, 9, 10 different customers and we had all these jobs, that person that handles accounts receivable, they're going to be making sure that you get your money and you get paid on time. Accounts payable, who is that? And what does that mean, Jay? That's the person that's going to make sure that you're paying your bills and you're paying your drivers and you're paying your owner operators. Simple as that. And that leads me, guys, to number 9, human resources. Human resources. Most of you know what human resources is. Well, eventually you may need somebody to take this role, right? Who's human resources? Somebody that's going to hire these guys, the drivers. Somebody's going to hire the owner operators. The person is going to make sure that they have all their paperwork, every single thing that requires for you to hire an owner operator or a driver, right? That could be multiple things. An owner operator's case, making sure they have all their insurance paperwork together before they go and work for you, their W-9s or COIs, and a lot of other things, right, that get involved with that. And the same thing with the drivers. When you go and you hire a driver, right, there's drug tests involved. There's a lot of other things that come involved. But again, that is what a human resource individual would do for you. They will make sure that the owner operators and the drivers have everything that they need before you actually hire them. Man, I saved the best for last. And number 10, guys, accounting and your finances. Guys, that's one of my favorites because you know what? At the end of the day, you can do everything we've talked about, but if you're not being responsible with your accounting and with your finances, all of this is not going to truly matter, okay? What do I mean by that? I mean, you have to have somebody that's going to be your accounting department, even if it's just one individual. Now, at the beginning, obviously, it's going to be you. You're the one that's going to be dealing with everything. But as you start to work your way up to getting to that 7-figure business, you're going to need somebody that's going to be doing your accounting, meaning they're going to be responsible, maybe even holding you accountable for the finances of the company. That person is going to be the one that's going to say, hey, we had X amount of dollars in payroll this week, and we had X amount of dollars come in this week. And now you get to know and understand that, hey, I got a budget for this and I got a budget for that. And I have to know how much money's coming in and how much money's going out. So what I mean by that is if you don't have an accounting person, eventually you will need an accounting person, because guess what? As 7 figures start to roll in and you start to deal with a lot of money, that accounting person is going to be crucial for your business. And you have to understand understand the finances, okay? Not only do you have to know how to manage the cash flow in your business, but ultimately, you're gonna need a lot of other things. You're gonna need a business line of credit to give you the cash flow that you need. You're gonna have to understand how to manage the income that you have, because you never know, your contractors may only pay you once every 30 days. Now, it varies depending on the contractor, depending on where you're located. You may have contractors that pay you every week, and that's great, but majority of contractors don't pay every week anymore. A lot of them go 15, 30, 45 days. Listen, I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. Some contractors go 60 and 90 days, and I've heard even longer without paying their trucking. So with that being said, it's very important and crucial that you have somebody handling the accounting and you understand the financial aspect of the dump truck business. Now, with that being said, guys, for the ones that stuck around to the end, I want to let you know that I am truly grateful for you, because guess what? That tells me that you may have what it takes to eventually have a 7-figure business. And if you like this video, make sure you comment below. You already know what we do here. This is Jay Mancini. We keep the wheels rolling and the cash flowing, and we'll see you on the next one.